She will birth the heir to the Roman Empire. The time for Caesarian. The union between Caesar and Cleopatra gave birth to Caesarian. The birth of a boy will unite both the Egyptian Empire and the Roman Empire. In 47 BCE, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Ptolemy, 15th Philometor Caesar, known as Caesarian, meaning Little Caesar. The birth of Caesarian solidified Cleopatra's bond with Caesar and strengthened her position both in Egypt and in Rome. She envisioned her son as the heir to both the Egyptian and Roman thrones, a ruler who could unite the two greatest powers of the ancient world. Cleopatra's court was now more vibrant than ever. Crowds of advisors, scholars, and diplomats frequented the palace, each seeking the queen's favor. Cleopatra's servants, ever loyal, ensured that her will was carried out with precision. The queen's influence extended far beyond the borders of Egypt, as she skillfully navigated the complex politics of Rome. But Cleopatra's hopes were dashed when Julius Caesar was assassinated on the Ides of March. The death of Caesar sent shockwaves through the Roman Empire and left Cleopatra vulnerable. In the aftermath of his death, Cleopatra returned to Egypt, where she focused on securing her son's future and consolidating her power. The streets of Alexandria were filled with tension as news of Caesar's death spread. Cleopatra knew that without Caesar's protection, her kingdom was at risk of being absorbed by Rome. But she was not one to give up easily. She bolstered her defenses and prepared for the possibility of invasion. Despite the looming threat, Cleopatra continued to rule with the same determination that had defined her reign. She introduced economic reforms, expanded trade, and continued to foster a culture of learning in Alexandria. Under her guidance, the city remained a beacon of knowledge and culture, attracting scholars and philosophers from across the world. Cleopatra also invested in the construction of grand monuments and temples, many of which bore the inscriptions of her name and that of her son, Caesarian. She wanted to ensure that her legacy would endure, that future generations would remember her not just as a queen, but as a pharaoh, a living goddess who had defended Egypt's sovereignty against the might of Rome. As Rome descended into civil war following Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra's fate became increasingly tied to the outcome of the power struggle between the leading factions. In 41 BCE, Cleopatra was summoned to Tarsus by Mark Antony, one of Rome's most powerful generals and a member of the Second Triumvirate, which sought to control the empire in the wake of Caesar's death. Cleopatra understood the importance of this meeting. Antony was a man of immense power and influence, and Cleopatra knew that winning his favor was crucial for the survival of her kingdom. She arrived in Tarsus in a grand procession, sailing up the Cydnus River on a magnificent barge adorned with purple sails and golden oars. Dressed as the goddess Isis, Cleopatra captivated Antony with her presence. The two leaders quickly allied, both political and personal. Cleopatra's charm and intelligence once again proved irresistible, and Antony found himself drawn to the queen. They spent the winter of 4140 BCE together in Alexandria, where Antony was enchanted by the luxury and sophistication of Cleopatra's court. In the grand halls of the palace, under the watchful eyes of her servants and advisors, Cleopatra and Antony plotted their future. Cleopatra's ultimate goal was the restoration of Egypt's former glory, and she saw in Antony the means to achieve this. She promised him resources and support in his campaigns in exchange for his protection and recognition of her son, Caesarian, as Julius Caesar's rightful heir. Antony, captivated by Cleopatra, agreed to her terms. Their relationship deepened, and Cleopatra bore him 3 children: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, and Ptolemy Philadelphus. The queen's court was now a blend of Egyptian and Roman influences, with servants and officials from both cultures working together under her command. The union of Cleopatra and Antony was met with suspicion and hostility in Rome, particularly by Octavian, Julius Caesar's adopted son and heir. Octavian viewed Cleopatra as a threat to his power and began to portray her as a seductress who had bewitched Antony, leading him astray from his Roman duties. This propaganda campaign would later be used to justify the war against Antony and Cleopatra. Despite the growing tensions, Cleopatra remained focused on securing her kingdom's future. She continued to govern Egypt with a firm hand, her palace bustling with activity as she received envoys, managed trade, and ensured that her people were well provided for. The queen's servants played a crucial role in maintaining the smooth operation of her court, carrying out her orders with unwavering loyalty. The alliance between Cleopatra and Antony ultimately led to a confrontation with Rome. In 31 BCE, Octavian declared war on Cleopatra, framing the conflict as a struggle to liberate Rome from her influence. The decisive battle took place at Actium, a naval engagement off the coast of Greece. Cleopatra, ever the strategist, had brought her fleet to support Antony. With both sides suffering heavy losses. But in a critical moment, Cleopatra made the decision to withdraw her ships from the fight, retreating to Egypt. Antony, torn between his loyalty to Cleopatra and his duty to his men, chose to follow her, effectively sealing their fate. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra and Antony made preparations for their last stand. The mood in the city was somber, the once bustling streets now quiet as the reality of their situation set in. Cleopatra's palace, usually filled with the sounds of laughter and music, became a place of tension and uncertainty. Cleopatra still held out hope for a diplomatic solution. She sent envoys to Octavian, offering to abdicate in favor of her children, but her pleas were ignored. Octavian was determined to bring Cleopatra back to Rome as a prisoner, to parade her in a triumph that would cement his victory. As Octavian's forces closed in on Alexandria, Antony, despondent and defeated, took his own life. The news of his death shattered Cleopatra. In her grief, she realized that the end was near, and that she would rather die as a queen than live as a captive. Humanity has been evolving for eons. Please like and subscribe.